Welcome back everyone. In this video, we will have a look at how to pass parameters while navigating from one view to another. And here's what we will do. In our department list component, we will display a list of departments. And if we click on a department, we should navigate to a department detail component. And in this department detail component, we are just going to display the ID of the department that the user has selected. So this sounds fairly simple. Let's get started with the code. Now I've already added the department list component code. So what I've done is created an array of departments. It has an ID and a name. And currently I have 5 departments: Angular, Node, Mongo, Ruby, and Bootstrap. And in the template, I use the ng-for directive to iterate over this department array, and each time I select the department and then I display the department ID and the department name. And I've also used a bit of styling, so I make use of a class called item and class called badge. So when I run this application and click on departments, this is how it's going to look. I'm going to have the department list and then the list of departments: Angular, Node, Mongo, Ruby, and Bootstrap. So what we need to do is, suppose I click on Angular, I need to be navigated to department detail component, where it is going to say you selected the department with ID is equal to 1. So let's see how to do this with code. Now first we are going to have to configure our new route. So in app-routing-module.ts, we are going to include a new path. So I'm going to have path, and this is going to be departments/ID. So this is basically a placeholder for a parameter. All right, and we are going to see how we are going to make use of this. Now department ID and then the component. So component is going to be department detail component. Yep. All right, now we also need to import this department detail component. So I'm just going to copy this and then paste it over here, and then I'm going to change this list to detail and then list to detail, and then we also need to include this in the routing components array. So I'm going to put a comma and then include this. So now let's go ahead and create this department detail component. So over here in our app folder, I'm going to add a new file. This is going to be department-detail.component.ts. So now we have this component. We're going to start off with, all right, I think I can make use of this employee list component as a template to get started. So we import component from Angular/core, and then we use the component decorator. Now instead of employee list component, we are going to call this, what did we call it? Let's go back to app routing module. We call this department detail component. So I'm going to paste this over here. And in fact, we don't even require this selector. Why? Because we are not going to embed this component anywhere. We are going to navigate to department detail component from the department list component. So we don't need a selector in this case. And in the h3 tag, I'm just going to say you selected department with ID is equal to, and then we'll fill this shortly. So now we have our department detail component basics ready. Now let's go back to our department list component and make sure that we navigate to department detail component. So the first thing we need to do is handle the click event on each department in this particular list. So when I click on a particular department, I need to go to the department detail component. So for that, we make use of event binding. So over here, and I'm just going to add it at the beginning so that it is going to be visible to you. So click event. So what happens when we click? We are going to assign it a handler. So I'm going to say on select, and then we are also going to pass the department. Now to navigate in the code, we need to make use of the router service. So let's go ahead over here and then import. What are we importing? The router service. And we're going to import this from Angular/router. Alright, now we have imported the service. So we are going to make use of dependency injection to get an instance of it. So over here in department list component, I'm going to have a constructor. So in the constructor, I'm going to create private router of type router. So now I basically have a local variable called router that refers to an instance of this router service. So now we can define this onSelect department method that is actually going to navigate to the department detail component. So under departments, all right, let me scroll a bit more. Now let's define onSelect. Now onSelect is going to accept a department that is nothing but the department that the user has clicked on. And once we have the department, we're going to use the router service that we have access to. And then we're going to call the navigate method on the router service. Now this navigate method takes in what is known as a link parameter array. Now this is basically all the information that Angular needs to construct the URL. Now we are going to pass in two items to this parameters array. The first one is the destination path. So this is nothing but /departments. If you have a look at app routing module, departments. So this is the first part of the URL. The second part is the parameter. So over here, I'm going to put a comma, and then what is the parameter we are going to pass? The ID of the selected component of the selected department. So I have the department over here. So I'm just going to call department.id. So whatever the user selected, I'm passing its ID as a parameter. So now I can save this, and let's have a look at our application to make sure it actually passes to the department detail component. So I'm going to click on Angular, and there you go. The departments/1 was reflected in the URL, and we are also displaying the department detail component. So you selected department with ID is equal to. So we are navigating to the department detail component, and we are also displaying the department detail component. The next step is to retrieve this ID or the parameter from the URL into our component and display it in the view. And for that, we make use of something known as activated route service. So in the department detail component, because this is where we need to retrieve the ID or the parameter, we need to first import activated route service. So import activated route service, and this we are going to import from, again, Angular/router. So again, when we have a service, we make use of dependency injection to constructor to get access to that. So constructor and private, and I'm going to call this route, and this is an instance of activated route. So now we have the dependency injection done, and we are going to fetch the parameter, and that is going to be done as soon as the component is loaded. So basically the onInit lifecycle hook. So I'm going to import onInit, and then this component is going to implement onInit. And then if it implements onInit, we need to define the ng onInit method. Alright, so in the onInit method, what are we going to do? We are going to retrieve the parameter. So I'm going to create a variable, let id is equal to, and we have access to the service, so this dot route, and this gives us a snapshot of the current route. So basically where are we? We are in the departments/1 URL. So that information is going to be provided by this snapshot. Now this snapshot gives us access to the params property, and in the params property, what do we need? We need the ID, and this ID is going to match what we configured in our router. So this ID should match this ID. So basically we're telling from the current URL, there's a parameter called ID, retrieve it and assign it to this property called ID. So this dot department ID, so we have let ID is equal to the ID from the parameter, and then we are going to create a simple department ID, public department ID. This is a variable that we are going to display in our view. So this dot department ID is equal to ID. So now this department ID is going to contain the ID that the user navigated to. So over here we can use interpolation to bind it. So department ID. So now I'm going to save this. Let's have a look at our application. All right, so let's begin from the beginning. Let's begin from the initial URL, localhost 3000. Now when I click on departments, I get the department list. When I click on Angular, I get you selected department with ID is equal to 1, and this 1 is nothing but the 1 in the URL. Let me go back to departments, click on node, you selected with ID is equal to 2. Mongo 3 and 3. So we have passed the parameter and we have retrieved the parameter. So let me go over the code one more time so that you get a better understanding this time how the flow works. So we start off with the department list component. So we have the ng-for directive to iterate over this departments array and then display each department. And then each department we are going to bind with the click method. So when we click on that, we are going to call onSelect method passing in the clicked department. So over here in onSelect, we are going to use navigate method of the router service, which takes in a link parameters array. So first we specify the path or the destination where we want to go to. That is nothing but departments, but this time we also want to specify a parameter. So that is nothing but department ID. So when I navigate to department/ID or department ID, app.routingmodule.ts is going to figure out that this is the path and I need to display department detail component. So the department detail component gets displayed, and over here we need to extract from the URL the ID of the department the user has clicked. And for that we make use of the activated route service. This is going to give us a snapshot of the current route, and that snapshot is going to contain all the parameters in the URL. And we just need the ID parameter. So we're going to retrieve that and assign it to a local variable called ID. And then we assign that ID back to a department ID that we have displayed in our view using interpolation. And that is how when I click on Angular, you select a department with ID is equal to 1. Alright, so that is how you pass a parameter and then retrieve that parameter in two different components or while navigating from one view to another. So thank you guys for watching, and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video.